Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Previously we talked about combating negative self-talk. We've talked about removing yourself from those toxic environments that created that trauma in your life or whatever. And so today today's video might be a little humorous, and at the same time it's very serious. I don't want to normalize trauma, even though a lot of people may be able to relate, but I do want to normalize therapy, because there has been times that I said to my therapist, like, oh, I guess it wasn't that bad, and she would remind me, she was like, no, you went through a lot, but you got through it, and so it's gonna be okay. So I want people to understand that trauma, it should not be normalized. You shouldn't think that what you're going through is normal just because a lot of people that you know have shared trauma with you. And that's one thing that I've seen a lot, just coming from certain communities, especially in the Black community. A lot of us tend to have the same trauma, and because we've experienced the same trauma, it kind of becomes like this normal thing, like, oh, that's just normal for us. And so the crazy thing is that I came across a video of Maya Angelou on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And Maya, she talked about being raped at 7 years old and becoming a mute. At some point in her life, she stopped speaking for many years, and then she talked about the same trauma in Why the Caged Bird Sings. And so Oprah had made a comment and said, it's crazy how people write in because they and say that did I make my story up, because your story is so much like Maya Angelou's. And she was just like, some people just share the same trauma. Some people have just gone through the same things, and that's just very accurate. Some people just go through the same things. And so I have a very close friend that life is similar to mine, not the same, but we have shared trauma and we deal with the same struggles today. And so let's not normalize trauma, but let's normalize therapy and getting help for our trauma. And so today I want to talk about how trauma affects you in the future, like how things turn out like in the future for somebody that has gone through traumatic situations, just anybody that has gone through certain things in their childhood that they carried into adulthood. And it doesn't necessarily have to be trauma, but it could be just a certain way that your parents raised you, or they reacted to you, or certain things that they said to you that you'll always remember for the rest of your life, and it kind of sticks with you. And so going back to the story that Maya Angelou shared, and she talked about becoming a mute because of being raped, like because of her childhood. And I wasn't a mute, but I internalized everything. And so it had got to a point where I didn't know how to express myself. So when I became an adult and started getting in relationships and stuff like that, it would be very hard for me to get my thoughts together, like to share how I'm feeling. Like it just wouldn't come out. It just wouldn't come out. And so it would sound like I was beating around the bush, or like I was just saying a lot of different things that didn't relate to each other. So they didn't quite make sense. And it would be frustrating for the person that I was with, because I didn't know how to express myself. Like, my communication was really, really bad. So now I've gotten to a place where I'm able to express myself. Like, I'm able to say exactly what's going on in my mind, regardless of how crazy it is, how crazy it sounds. I'm able to say how something is affecting me, on a mental level. And yeah, it is crazy. Like, or I don't like to use the word crazy, but people would say that it's crazy, and it's just because of the trauma that I've experienced in the past. And so I also want to mention Darla, from Queen Sugar. Because on a more recent episode, she had like really, really broke down because she ended up seeing one of her friends from that she grew up with. And this friend that she grew up with was somebody that she was doing drugs with, drinking with, like just going to crazy parties with. And during her meeting, she found out that she was raped. Like, the girl said, she was like, you were so out of it and you were dragged upstairs. And she mentioned a second person that she ended up being with. She was like, I don't remember being with that person. And it turned out that she found out that she was raped, and it was because she was not able to she wasn't able to say yes or no to sex because she was heavily under the influence, and it just sent her into a state of that same trauma that she went through. And so she ended up picking up a drink and drinking again, even though she was a recovering addict. And throughout the episodes, you could see her spiraling, like, and it does start with like her not contacting her sponsor and telling her sponsor that she's in a stressful situation. Like, it started with the book that Nova released about the family and their own personal stories. It started with that, and she started spiraling downhill from that. And this last situation is pretty much what broke her and what got her to that place where she needed to start drinking again. And so that's just one example of how trauma can affect you in the future. Some people do become dependent on drugs and alcohol, and that's a big reason why I don't smoke, because I know that it can become an addiction for me. And so because both of my parents were addicts, and so that's like one reason that I don't smoke. But just thinking about her situation and how it affected her, she turned to drugs and alcohol to suppress those things that she was going through. And she became an addict because of it, and she started making a lot of bad decisions because of her addiction. And that's pretty much how it works when it comes to childhood trauma, and things that you go through. You turn into, if you never get help for it, like if you never see a therapist for it, and you're unable to talk to your family and you're unable to talk to your friends, then you learn to deal with it on your own. And all of your issues end up coming out in some kind of way, in some kind of unhealthy way. And I think for me, a part of my childhood trauma has, I've developed abandonment issues because of it. I've dealt with major depression because of it. And I go through like just this self-sabotaging behavior because of it.